Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to The Nest. It's March 18th, 2021, and we're streaming live with entrepreneurs and investors from around the world. I'm Jim Chu, CEO of Untapped Global, and our goal here on The Nest is to connect entrepreneurs in frontier markets with angel investors worldwide. We stream live every month, and all episodes are recorded and available on our website, untapped-global.com. This month, we're hosting two exciting startups from North Africa, working with blockchain, and we welcome 3 new investors to the program. We also host audiences in several cities around the world that are hosting in-person events to connect with the global Nest investment network. We have groups in Abidjan, Nairobi, and San Juan, Puerto Rico, safely meeting in person and joining us live today on The Nest. Before we get started, a quick shout out to Invest Africa, our partner in putting on The Nest. We, both Untapped Global and Invest Africa, share the goal of connecting investors with untapped opportunities in Africa and other frontier markets. We host virtual, in-person, and in-country events in North America, Europe, the Middle East, and of course, Africa. You can find out more at investafrica.com and at untappedglobal.com, or follow us on LinkedIn. And to make sure you get notified of all of our events, follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter at Untapped Global. Today, I'd like to also welcome Startup List Africa, our co-host today. For investors, we welcome Scott Hartley, Adenike Sheriff, and Steven Grin as investors on the panel. And as entrepreneurs, we welcome Mohamed Abdou Nebras Jemel. Now over to the entrepreneurs. Mohamed, please, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I would like to thank especially Kenny for giving us this great opportunity to be here and showing the strength of Pravica. So Pravica is actually a unified communication suite that meets with 3.0 standard and uses blockchain technology to empower user privacy and security. Actually, we are extremely proud to position ourselves as a blind service provider. So before I start, I would like to spotlight on the problem that we actually solve. On the recent report from the FBI, there are more than $26 billion losses because of the business email compromise attack in the last 3 years. Business email compromise attack simply is just when someone compromises your business email and act on behalf of you in financial transactions. For example, Shark Tank's Barbara Corcoran lost nearly $400,000 beginning of 2020 because of the business email compromise attack. And also for other digital communication tools, WhatsApp founder said, I sold my user privacy to Facebook. And we all know what's happening now according to the privacy policy in WhatsApp. Google still keeps a list of everything you ever bought, and there are a massive data leakage of 773 million emails addresses from Outlook. Zoom says free users will not get end-to-end encryption. So it's all coming because they are using an outdated technology, which is a client-server model. But from Pravica, we are securing the digital communication with end-to-end encryption and user-owned encryption keys. So we are, Pravica keeps users safe across a full communication suite with a military-grade data security standard and full encryption by user-owned encryption key. Right now, we have email service, chat, conferences, video, and voice calls all under one integrated suite. So for emails, you will have ads-free, privacy-focused email service provider, all running under a decentralized identity system coming from Stack's infrastructure. And we have a fully secured private chat capabilities and also fully end-to-end encrypted in Pravica Meet, actually by design. So according to the communication market or digital communication market, it's already tapped $160 billion in 2019 and expected to reach up to $400 billion by 2026. And by the way, all these statistics before COVID-19 pandemic, and we see how much the acceleration in digital communication platforms. So in the last year, we have generated $165,000 revenue by building more than 21,000 user-based in over 110 countries, and we are running 3 pilot projects right now for enterprises to add more 4,000 users to our use base. So we are also featured by our partners, which is a blockchain infrastructure partners like Flurry. It's a database blockchain infrastructure. They featured Pravica, one of the greatest projects in terms of digital communication. And on Blockstack, we are the #1 application, and we are featured on many events right there. So our business model is still the monthly subscription, which is scale with storage, and according to the individuals and enterprises and how much they are using the digital or a decentralized storage. So we are now in H1 with 2021. It means that we are in the user acquisition phase, looking to grow for in a different area. So we are about to hit, it's our dream, about to hit the first million user by end of this year. So we closed a pre-seed round with total investment of $500,000 from a prominent VCs like 500 startups. And we are incubated by Longhash, which is a blockchain global incubator based in Singapore. So for me, I am Mohamed Abdou. I'm founder and CEO, and I have more than 20 years experience software engineering, information security, and cryptography. I'm holding a master's degree in digital currency and blockchain, and more than 5 years experience in blockchain development. And we have a great team of 5 blockchain engineers and developers, and a great advisors and experts from different parts from the information security and business perspective. Thank you so much. I hope that I fit the time.
Absolutely, that was perfect timing. Thank you very much, Mohamed. Very interesting presentation. Well, let's go straight over to the angels. Who would like to start first with questions, comments, and feedback?
I can go ahead. I had a question. Thanks, Mohamed. That was a great presentation, and really like the approach, and I agree with the thesis 100%. I was curious of your thoughts, given all the attention around NFTs and non-fungible tokens, and whether you see something in the future. All the focus has been around art and collectibles, but I think that there's a real opportunity potentially to assign data to an NFT, which I stake to a company and I receive a return from it, or I withhold and keep my data, right? How do you think about sort of NFT and the future of privacy? I was curious.
NFT is still young, and we're still seeing growing in terms of non-fungible tokens and how much it's getting popular. Actually, mid of April, we're going to launch Pravica secure chat application, and we're going to launch 1,000 NFTs for the first 1,000 users to hold. From the data privacy perspective, NFT already launched. When you earn an NFT, it's already secured by blockchain, so no one can grab it or take it from you. So it's just about the ownership. It's going to be transferred to you. So as long as you have your keys, everything is going to be with you. So NFT is just a representation for something valuable. So as long as you have the right, you can keep it forever. Think about the Mona Lisa. So someone painted already before, but later on, maybe someone can get an issue an NFT for it. So it will be sold, and then the ownership is going to be stored on the blockchain. This is about the NFTs. But it is not apart from Pravica, actually. It's just we're going to make it for the occasion of the launching.
Mohamed, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, how are you?
I think a lot about like something like business like Coinbase, and I think one of the reasons why Coinbase is going to be worth so much money in the public markets is not because it's a proxy for crypto, but because they've solved the sort of user interface experience of interacting with crypto. My 77-year-old father could go on Coinbase and buy Bitcoin. I think that is a leap from where we were a few years ago. And a lot of this business of what you're endeavoring with Pravica is going to be driven by behavior change, which is, I think, one of the hardest things to do for any startup. PGP was largely unsuccessful because, if one end is encrypted and the other isn't, then it's basically just unencrypted. And so I'm just interested to understand, this flywheel that's core for your business of users, consumers, businesses, how do you really kickstart that? Because to me, any business that's engaged in that, whether it's enterprise or consumer, requires a significant amount of capital to reach some sort of critical mass to go beyond just the fringe folks who are really interested in new technology.
Yeah. So I'd like to share something here. Maybe we missed it from the presentation. If it's allowed to share my screen again or not.
Absolutely, please do. In fact, I encourage you to keep some of your slides up so that people can follow some of the things you're saying.
Okay. So actually here, what I'm talking about, it's how the go-to-market strategy. Is it in front of you now?
Yes, it is.
So for the go-to-market strategy, we believe that for the emerging technology like blockchain, we need to talk with the government because there is a lot of things in terms of regulation. And this is why we are using, or we are believing in top-to-down approach. So we started to talk with the government, we showed our strength, and successfully we signed the first deal with the first governmental entities to use Pravica as a communication platform to secure the digital communication through the pandemic. And then we started to talk with the banks, talk with the big companies, research centers. So we are trying to expand the network and make change in the concept of the normal email is something outdated. These protocols already has been developed since 17th, and now it is outdated and full of vulnerabilities. Everything is going to be changed in the future, and we are the future. And once they're gonna, because they feel the pain, they already feel that pain. So a lot of pain right now in the digital communication. So it will be easier step by step to convince people about using your technology. And another thing, which is from my perspective, very important, especially for individuals, to give them a seamless user experience. And here, what we are doing at Pravica Chat. At Pravica Chat, you can feel that it's normal. It's something like the normal chat you are using. Can you see it? It's clear on the screen?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, so just feel the experience when you go inside any chat and find everything is totally encrypted by your keys, and you just click some button to decrypt them back to the normal mode. User don't care about what's going on inside or at the back end. They just care the normal user, individual. They just caring about the experience, how much it is easy, how much it is applicable to use. And especially that it is just a decentralized identity. They don't care about the decentralized identity, blockchain stuff, and all these things. But they care about how much it is easy to use. So from my perspective, for enterprises and governmental entities, you need to go directly with the regulators, tell them that this is the future. And then for individuals, you need to give them a seamless experience because they don't like to go in a very complicated portals.
So we have a question from Reuven Heck. Thank you, Reuven. How is the responses from the governments about usage of public blockchain networks? And I know there's been quite a bit of discussion around regulatory frameworks around crypto. So yes, please go ahead.
Yes, it was very hard, but we talked to the technical guys. Now, using public chain, it's not about putting your data in public. Public chain is going to protect you because there is a tremendous amount of hashing power behind these public chain. So we are using the identity management system on the public chain. This is why we are protecting your identity, and no one can compromise your identity. And once we show the technical terms, everything in a very deep details, they will start to understand, yes, this is true. And there is some parts should be internally, and it is totally encrypted. You know that we have a public link for anyone using Pravica or try to use Pravica. There is our database. We don't hide anything because as you already saw, this is how our database looks like. It's totally encrypted, so we don't afraid by losing anything. It's open, just encrypted. If you have the keys, you can decrypt. So here is, you need to, you have the awareness, awareness session. You need to educate the users just about how they can protect the keys. And I believe that from what we are seeing, growth in the crypto market, and people start talking in the media about the Bitcoin and all these things, people started to know what's the meaning of the keys and how they should protect their keys. It's step by step, one by one, but this is the future, and we should believe that we are the early believers. Some tasks that we should do to educate our users.
Okay, Adenike, your thoughts?
Thank you so much, Mohamed. Really fantastic stuff that you're building. Especially, I'm really excited about it because it's early days for blockchain still, and to see, innovative solutions around that coming out of Africa that can be used around the world is quite incredible. I think that my major question will be how you plan to gain the trust of prospective users, because you're asking them for quite sensitive data. I know that you mentioned that with your pricing plan, you're making money from them, paying for the services and not by selling their data. But how do you intend to manage, just that trust barrier that will come with being privy to such sensitive data?
So thank you for this question. If I understood in the right way, you are asking about the sensitive data for like enterprises, governmental entities, all these things. We have,
yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Essentially, how do you plan to convince users that their data is safe in your hands?
Yes. So now your data is totally encrypted by your keys, but we have another option for enterprises that we can build their nodes. Actually, one of the business model of the revenue channels, the total number of nodes for enterprises. If you are a big bank, if you are governmental entities, depending on how much nodes that you need to build internally, we're gonna charge you. Because when you're building your nodes, we set up the whole blockchain database layer at your nodes, and then your data is yours. If you wanna go for small enterprises, if you wanna go for the cloud service, no problem. It's much cheaper for you, and you also feel safe because everything, it's not like a normal cloud storage, or we are putting our files, we are putting our images, and we don't know who's seeing it. But in Pravica, we are using a certain service supported from the blockchain infrastructure that we are working with. It's called Gaia. Gaia, it's starting from your local storage up to whatever the cloud service that we are using. Everything is being encrypted by your keys and stored right there, like what we saw on the chat. So for small enterprises, they are using the cloud server that we are supporting them, the decentralized storage. For big enterprises, we are building the nodes for them, and there is extra charging fees for this. I hope that I answered in a clear way.
Mohamed, when you talk about the sort of the proprietary closed loop model, it's almost like you're building an intranet for enterprise or for governments. And I'm just interested to hear, like, as you look beyond Egypt, especially around sort of a B2G model, how much appetite has there been for that? Versus, I think someone raised this earlier, because of the proprietary nature of this, people want to keep their data ring-fenced. There's obviously been a massive push towards localization of data storage, especially around things like proprietary stuff, if you're talking about defense or finance or what have you.
Yes, actually, we are not building a new internet for them because they are using the same internet protocols, the same internet connection. It is not an intranet. It is the same internet. You are connected with the service provider, you are online, but the application itself for big enterprises are talking to the different layer, which is already the nodes already connected over the internet. And they are keep watching their data. But the most important thing here, think about it like a bank. If the IT of the bank have the access for the email service or server like Exchange, theoretically speaking, and believe me, it's practical, the IT guy can read what the CEO is sending to anyone. And here is that change. Even if you have IT department managing your all IT infrastructure for big corporates, they will not be able to manipulate the communication between different entities or different parts. Because how to secure your keys, we have different solutions here. Starting from just store it in a local device up to a hardware wallet, you can generate your keys and seal it on a hardware wallet. So you can, once you need to log in with the Pravica platform, you just put it on the USB device. Once they started to learn, to know about the technology, they started to believe, yes, this is the best solution for us to go for. Especially that they already facing the great problem with different providers about the communication channels. I hope that I answered it in the right way.
Oh, thanks for that. And just as a note, we will be opening up for comments and questions from the audience as well. So please feel free to post in the chat box, and we'll call on you when in a couple of minutes. Angels, any other comments or questions? Okay, in that case, I will read one from Fergus SG. Are there trapdoor functions pertinent to your use of blockchain networks? Thanks, Fergus. I can read that question again. The question from Fergus SG was, are there trapdoor functions pertinent to your use of blockchain networks?
I didn't get the question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can, if you want to read it directly, it's in your chat box, but I'll say it again. Are there trapdoor functions pertinent to your use of blockchain networks?
Trapdoor functions? Use you.
Fergus, if you'd like to jump in and clarify what you mean by the question, exactly, that'd be, feel free.
I feel it's like a tech question, and I love the tech Indeed. Part. So yeah, I need to understand it exactly, so I can answer.
Indeed. Steven and Scott and Adenike, any other thoughts from you? I'd like to get your thoughts on the company as we wait for potential questions from the audience.
Mohamed, I had a question of just as you kind of look at current kind of analogs in the market, who would you say, you're thinking about a Cloudflare or some of the different platforms out there, what are the ways in which you think you can leapfrog, I think, over some of the things that maybe the companies, the incumbents, aren't looking at doing? Where are the gaps, or where are the things that you think that blockchain technology can add sort of an additional layer of privacy or security?
The simplest answer to this question is blockchain can guarantee your privacy because everything is being related to your identity. So think about it like one identity, and you can use it to protect or encrypt your data. You can use it as a wallet. You can use it as the way to store the value. You can use it to prove your ownership for anything, and everything is going to be connected to a wallet. And to take this wallet to another level and put a readable name like Scott.id, and I can email Scott.id. I can send money to Scott.id. So all these things, we will eliminate the factor of the cloud provider, whatever it is, of reading the data or manipulating the data, because they will just store a raw material or the ciphertext, nothing more. This is how the blockchain changing the concept of monetizing from the user, because in a normal client server model, we should put everything on the service provider, and he is manipulating everything. But here, the service provider, it just guarantee the functionality, and everyone is responsible for his own data. And we are taking the responsibility of data privacy from the tech shoulders to the user himself.
So could you review again what your ask is? How much are you raising? What valuations and so on?
We already raised in our pre-seed round. It was in April 2020 of $500,000 from prominent VCs like 500 Startups, Modus Capital, Dairis Ventures in Egypt. And now we started to look for the second round, which is in our MENA region, they call it Series E. Maybe in US, they call it seed round, according to the amount. But we are raising the $3 million, and we are looking to dilute 10 to 15 minutes from our shares. And we started to discuss with the investors right now for the second round.
So with that, I'd like to hear from the angels what they think about this investment. Is something that you're interested in, or not? Go ahead, anyone.
Absolutely love what you're building. Definitely interested in it because of, the scale of what it could unlock, not only in Africa, but across the world. Curious to know if you're looking to expand into other markets or other countries too as well.
Actually, we started to talk with some governments also in the Gulf area and some other enterprises to start using Pravica in their internal communication. So we are a global product. We are based in Egypt as a backup team, but we are a global product. We are registered in Delaware. We are ready to play whenever we can succeed.
I like the fact that you're registered in Delaware.
It was basics because one of our early investor, 500 Startups, and we should register in Delaware to close the deal.
Yes, and you work with governments a lot. So how do you get those introductions, bridge trust, especially when you start expanding into other markets where trust may not exist?
Yes, work with the government, from my experience, it needs a connection. Once you have a great connection that can establish the trust, and everything then is in our hand. So once we have a connection, we can go. But I believe it can take time. Look, our last deal with the government entity in Egypt, it took 6 months of discussions and assessment until we reach to the final agreement and we close the deal and we receive the payment. This is how the B2G works. It's very hard, can take time, but it gives like credibility and faster in adoption. But I had the experience to work with them. I love this one.
Awesome, thank you.
Right, well, we'll make sure we put you in touch. Steven, Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, Mohammed, I think what you're building is incredibly ambitious, and we love founders who are building hard things. I think, Web 3.0 and the sort of whole model of, retooling, what was done right and wrong with TCP/IP is really exciting and interesting. I'm interested in learning a little bit more about your uses of capital, and we can talk about that offline, not necessarily now. In particular, because I imagine a lot of the protocols you're building on, you'll need to train engineers to build in. It's quite proprietary, so that's another challenge. B2G is hard. I'm thinking about other pathways to market and how to avoid you guys being pigeonholed as like a Accenture consulting company for governments. Like that's death's door. And I don't think that's why you're doing what you're doing. So yeah, we'd love to talk a little bit more about this offline.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really echo what Steven said about going after hard problems. So hats off to you for that. And Web 3.0 is an incredibly exciting space. I would say narratively, from a storytelling or a pitch standpoint, one of the things that I personally believe a lot in is the kind of Peter Thiel mentality of monopolize a local market and then expand out. And so I think one risk is going after sort of global B2G, global privacy, all these things from where you are. I think that to tell the global story from day one is hard. So what I would maybe say is tell the big vision story. I almost think of it like an hourglass. So you have, very wide aperture, very laser focused execution, And then that's the first of many markets you go into. And so you kind of expand back out on the end of the presentation. So, hey, this is a huge problem. It's Web 3.0. It's fixing what was wrong with the internet from the 1990s. Go to market, we're going to execute against this one vision, which is heavily focused on one client, one market, one sort of, however you want to narrow that focus. But that's only the beginning. We think this is a global market opportunity, and we can go big, right? So I think that's a really nice narrative story that can get you through some of the maybe pushback on the B2G story or the market story or any of those things. That would be one kind of point of feedback, but super interesting. And yeah, I would love to connect offline.
This is absolutely true, and this is what we are looking when we talk with the investors, that we need strategic investors. It's not about money, but it's about how, with the connection, how with the mentoring, how with the vision can add a great value to Pravica. This is critical in the deal we are doing with the investors.
Well, I hope you have a chance to find some of those value-added investors through this forum, and I'm glad to hear the congratulations. You got a very great response from all the investors, and also from the audience as well. There are a good number of folks who are interested. I know it's a very technical topic, so it's not always easy to describe a technical topic in such a short amount of time, so congratulations. But close to 70% of the respondents indicated that they would be interested in investing, so congratulations on a great presentation and great Q&A. We'll be making sure to connect everybody with you, Mohamed, with everybody else that's on the panel. But in case those in the audience want to get in touch with you, how do they reach you?
My email directly, Abdou, Pravica, I write it down in the chat, abdou@pravica.io. And I'm on Twitter, MHABDOU76.
And please share that in the chat box so everybody has it and they can get in touch with you. And we have a great comment from Hani Ashohawi. Sorry for the bad pronunciation. A very interesting space and good presentation. Mohamed, let's connect. Great pitch from Nairobi, and everybody in Nairobi is very excited. Great. Well, thank you very much, Nairobi. Thank you very much, Mohamed. And thank you for your time.
I'm really, really happy to be here. And again, I would like to thank Kenny for giving us, Kaoun for giving us this opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Mohamed.
Thank you.
Well, with that, let's move over to Nebras. Nebras, are you ready to present? And while we're waiting for you to get queued up, I just wanted to share one of the polls from earlier. Where you're from, you'll see that we have a pretty diverse audience today. We have half from Africa, but also about a quarter from Europe, and then almost a quarter from North America. So this is truly a global audience today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. San Juan, Puerto Rico, are you guys there?
Yes, we are here. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can. And how about a cheer, everybody? You guys look like you need a drink. Woo!
We got a room full of blockchain investors, entrepreneurs, and enthusiasts. So we're excited to be here. Yeah.
Glad you guys can make it. Thanks for joining. And I'm surprised you haven't started with the wine yet. Soon. All right. Over to you, Nebras. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, so my name is Nebras Jemel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kaoun, which is a company that aims to equalize access to financial and government services for all connected people. Our story starts from Tunisia, as in the city of Sidi Bouzid, where the Tunisian revolution started over 10 years ago. You only have 4.3 bank branches per 100,000 people, and only 23% of adults own debit cards. You compare that to Tunis, which is the capital city, you find 47% bank branches per 100,000 people and 68% of adults owning debit cards. So access to essential resources like bank branches is a lot harder for some people like those in Sidi Bouzid compared to those in Tunis. This, however, is not just a Tunisia problem, it's a regional problem. Brick and mortar banks or traditional banks are leaving a lot of money on the table by not targeting the right audiences. Only 34.6% of adults in MENA have the bank accounts, according to the World Bank in 2017. However, 93.1% of them have IDs, so they can be easily identified. And there are 74% of adults have smartphone connections in the region, and this is a 2025 projection. So to solve this issue or just this chasm between the ownership and the connected population, we created FLUSI, which is a financial inclusion pipeline that starts with an easier eKYC process, goes into a payment platform that's powered by blockchain, and then goes into credit applications as well, in order to take people from being financially excluded to full financial inclusion. The backbone of this is Kaoun ID, which is a trusted digital identity gateway that's been approved by the Tunisian government. It starts by scanning national IDs and then doing a liveliness check, running some facial recognition algorithm, and then integrating directly into AML and blacklist softwares of the partner banks. This, of course, comes in a very neat and simple user experience where you just enter your phone number, get an SMS, scan your ID, take the video selfie, and fill a form. And after that, a verification agent would call you in order for you to get an electronic signature as well as a free bank account. This free bank account is accessible both through the FLUSI app, which is available on the Play Store and the App Store, as well as the FLUSI SDK, which is very similar to what Zelle does in the United States, is a way for banks to integrate these services into their own apps in order to reach their clients. Of course, the idea here is that FLUSI is not just a pipeline, it's also a financial super app. That allows people to get access to eGov services through electronic signatures, but also do peer-to-peer transfers, merchant payments, top-ups, and utilities. The competitive advantage here is KaounNet, which is a decentralized interbank platform. So basically, we have a distributed ledger that allows us to have deals with the banks in order for money transfer from one bank to the next to be instantaneous, which is something that would completely replace wire transfers locally, as there is currently no competing infrastructure here. We also happen to have the first completely digital eKYC process in Tunisia. So we have had this historic agreement of the Central Bank of Tunisia in order to allow us to launch fully digital onboarding processes. We also have developed an expertise in dealing with documents in the Arabic language in order to fully automate the onboarding process. Our product is also highly scalable and can plug into across a variety of sectors. So not just banking per se, but also microfinance, as a number of our partners are in that sphere as well. Our business model is that we charge the partner bank a fee for active user per year. We also take a certain percentage on as a transaction fee for transactions between banks, as well as a fixed fee for some other services that we provide. And then there is a separate integration and maintenance fee for the SDK. The market that we're targeting is, of course, very big, as it's projected to be more than $1 trillion globally in 2019 when it comes to mobile payments, and when it comes to just the KYC market, it's projected to be at around $12 billion globally by 2022. We have a really good team behind this product. Myself, I was a Harvard student and then worked as the first engineer of Legalist, which was a YC startup. Anis, my co-founder, worked at Microsoft and Seedstars World Africa. We have a number of partners. We've launched with the Tijeri Bank, which is the fourth largest bank in Africa, and we've started integration with a number of other partners as well. We have a private beta that's out there with an MFI, which is INDA, and we've been incubated by the Google for Startups Accelerator in their summer 2020 batch. Finally, we plan to expand into multiple countries in the region. Particularly, we were accepted already into the regulatory sandbox of the Jordanian Central Bank, but we're also targeting Morocco, Algeria, and Egypt as well in the banking, microfinance, NGO insurance, and eGov services through this pipeline. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nebras, for the presentation and being just on time. All right, over to the angels.
Happy to jump in. Nebras, great to meet you. That was a great and succinct presentation. I really enjoyed that. I'm keen to sort of take a deeper dive into how you think about building this on, in part on other rails. So, you've got these bank partnerships. I'm assuming they provide some sort of on-bus services for these accounts. I'm imagining there's conversations around white labeling your products. How do you think about expansion? Geographic expansion is very challenging. Would love to learn a little bit more about like what is like the addressable market just in Tunisia relative to other markets. What we found historically is companies could scale the banks on the backs of these banks is an interesting way, but you're potentially going from less saturated markets into more saturated, more competitive markets. So just keen to sort of understand a little bit more of those market dynamics and really the depth of these relationships with like something like Antijari and other banking partnerships.
So I guess I'm going to start first off with kind of what our strategy has been in Tunisia. So in Tunisia, we've worked with these partner banks with our own Flusi brand, as well as through the SDK. So when it comes to, we're not thinking about white labeling the products per se, but we really think of ourselves as a brand, like, in a way like Visa or MasterCard. So there's like pay with Flusi, you're getting your Flusi account. However, that account, is being powered by a different bank or a different brand. As I said here, the big inspiration for us was the way Zelle was integrated with a number of banks in the United States. In Tunisia, we had to build our blockchain platform because of the lack of open banking APIs, as well as the lack of instant payment transfers. When it comes to scaling to different markets that either might have an instant payment transfer or might have, open API, they might have like API related regulation. We think that partnering with like maybe one or two banks in that country should be enough for us to be able to provide our services, as opposed to thinking about incorporating as many banks as possible in a specific market. That makes the expansion task a lot easier, because now we no longer need to buy in, kind of the biggest player in the market. It's sufficient for us to get like the smallest bank in the market, and then have them be the bank that opens accounts for people who have been previously unbanked, and then use in a way any sort of other existing infrastructure in order for people who are already banked to be able to actually use our platform with partner banks as well. So in a way, this is how we're thinking about moving from just Tunisia to markets that might be more saturated, because in the end, there's a lot of people. For example, one of the countries that we want to go to is Egypt, and probably all of there's a number of startups that are trying to move into that market. But in the end, just having to work with partner banks and targeting groups that are present across multiple countries. So Tijeri, for example, is present in Morocco, it's present in Tunisia, it's present in Egypt as well. ATB, one of our partner banks, is the local subsidiary of the Arab Bank, which is present in Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, as well as Jordan. So that way, these partnerships, and targeting groups that have a regional presence would present a good vehicle for expansion for places outside of Tunisia. But for now, our goal for the next 6 months, or for 2021, is to make sure that we monopolize the Tunisian market, as well as establish through these partnerships with these groups, at least one partnership in Morocco and another partnership in Jordan.
What is monopolization of Tunisia? What if you win Tunisia? What does that look like?
So for us, winning Tunisia really means that we finalize, we have basically 2 or 3 banks that are already in production. So as I said, now we are in production with the Tijeri Wafa, with the Tijeri Bank, and we want to take a second and third bank in production over the next 2 months. Once that's in place, then given all the bank conversations that we've had, because of the lack of an instant payment infrastructure, we expect that we're going to have a buy-in from most of the other banks that we have, which systematically would bring in the majority of the already banked population. And when it comes to targeting the unbanked, that's kind of where we come in, and that's where our marketing strategy comes in. But currently, our growth has been quite steady with the Tijeri Wafa, so we're not worried about other players coming in. The other thing is that there's a network effect here. So the moment, as I said, the moment that we actually have more than one bank in production, we believe that it's in the best interest of any third bank to actually join this network, as opposed to work with any potential competitor that might come up. And that's why we believe that the moment that we take the second and third bank into production, we are in a comfortable position in Tunisia and can focus on expanding our services elsewhere.
Nebras, that was a great presentation. Thanks so much for that. I also really like going after sort of into the infrastructure stack of the KYC process. And again, hats off to both of you guys who presented today for kind of solving hard problems. I love also the aspect of going after and monopolizing sort of the local Tunisia market and sort of land and expand. I was curious, as you go into markets like Algeria, Morocco, across the Maghreb, what are some of the channel partnerships? One company comes to mind. I'm an angel investor in Yassir, which is a kind of a super app for ride sharing, food delivery, all that in starting in Algeria, but now expanding to Morocco, Tunisia. Are there other channel partnerships or companies that you could be adjacent to banks that you could sort of leverage to get scale across the region?
Yeah, so I think that what we're focusing on, or what we've been focusing on, is A, banks, and B, MFI, so like microfinance institutions, because we believe that the credit capabilities of this platform would bring in a lot of the formerly unbanked users because of that need. When it comes to partnering with other companies that also target the whole Francophone Africa or Maghreb region, Yassir being one of them. We have just worked on a developer API that allows these companies to just kind of integrate us, but also kind of would be a plug and play. So they would integrate once with us in Tunisia, for example, and once we're in Algeria, then they would be ready to go. The web version of that is ready. We have a mobile SDK that should be released in the next few weeks. And once that is in place, but like Yassir also happens to be a relatively an exception here because of the fact that it is really present. It's a new player, but that happens to be present in all of these countries. But we, mainly we're focusing on banks and MFIs because that's how we can build the infrastructure, and everything else is really just the icing on top of the cake.
I think to a parallel analogy that just comes to mind in the US, different sector, different space, but looking at sort of Robinhood, into how Robinhood has basically been able to on-ramp a whole new generation of folks into brokerage, zero commission brokerage. I think there's a real opportunity, as you alluded to, through the identification and KYC process of bringing people that are sort of underrepresented or under-included in the financial system. So that should be, a real driver of growth. So I think that, there's a lot of neobanks out there, but if you look at the data, most neobanks move somebody from legacy bank to digital mobile bank. They're not net accretive to bringing unbanked people into the banking world. So I think that it takes something like what you're building through a KYC process, through a national identification process, to actually expand the pie and actually be accretive to bringing more people into the financial system. So I think that's all really exciting.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Scott. Adenike, any thoughts or comments?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
We can.
Yeah, I can.
Awesome. I love what you're building. Just gonna echo sentiments that you're solving a really hard problem, and it's super necessary, especially given the rates of difficulty that people have in opening traditional bank accounts due to the regulatory friction in Tunisia. I think that the most exciting thing for me about what you're building is your model, because you've been able to find a way to monetize through the partner banks who use you as a software as a service. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that correct? As well as then charge transactions on the P2P transactions between users. So what I'll be most curious about is what has adoption looked like, and what assumptions did you make starting out building this product that have turned out not to be true as people use the product?
So when it comes to launch, we've had a launch campaign that has been very, very successful, and which took us by surprise. In a way, we kind of launched the product, and just like in a small market like Tunisia, had 10,000 downloads in about the first 2 days. which actually caused us a bit of a problem at first, which was, was a nice problem to have. But because the process has a video call to be able to actually launch the bank account, as I said, we needed to quickly expand our call center capacity in order to bring in all of this flow. So we focused between November and December, kind of we silenced communication. We focused on bringing all of this incoming flow into people that already have bank accounts. And now we're back at kind of like a steady growth rate. So currently we have about between 120 and 140 appointments taking per day for people who want to create bank accounts. And this is, as I said, with only one bank account, with only one partner bank in production. We believe, as from the comments that we're receiving from users, as the second and third bank account come in, we believe that number, or like that rate of growth, would dramatically increase. Even though, as I said, like we're doing like relatively impressive numbers for a country like Tunisia so far.
That sounds really amazing. I would definitely love to speak offline and just dig in a little bit more into the numbers, and especially the KYC part that you mentioned. That portion I'm really curious about. But great work.
Thank you.
So we have a question or a comment from the audience from Nicholas Kimali in Nairobi. Awesome pitch. Are there APIs that one can link to? As a customer, can I pre-record some data? And then for every other registration, I just load and work on the dynamic data, like video calls.
The second part, yes. So once you fill your application once, then basically there's a number of shared elements that are there. And then if you need to actually do your video again, for example, if you want to open a second bank account at a different bank, or if for some reason you lost your electronic signature and you need that again, then the only part that's left is the video call or any sort of questionnaire that like the second bank would ask. So this comes with a huge advantage. When it comes to APIs, we have APIs for payments. So as I said, we have, we've built the API, and then on top of that, we built the web SDK, and currently we're building the mobile SDK. When it comes to the identity part, then there are APIs that are currently bank facing. We haven't started targeting businesses that are trying to identify their clients outside of the banking and MFI sectors yet. And that's mainly because, again, in a market like Tunisia, the most basic infrastructure, or like kind of where the regulation is hardest, is in the financial sector. But our API integration is for identity, mostly bank facing. For payments, it's there, and some websites are using it already.
And we also have a question from Ann Kimemia, which when are you expanding to Kenya? And I guess that's a broader question of what your geographic go-to-market looks like.
Yeah, so as I said, for now we're really focused on what we have an idea about what's going to happen in the rest of 2021 and up to Q1 of 2022, and the focus there is lock or monopolize Tunisia, and then B, explore the countries that I just mentioned. So first focus is Morocco and Jordan, and then Algeria and Egypt. Once we're there, I think we would be at the level of maturity where we can try to further aggressively expand. As I said, it depends really heavily on the regulation on every specific market. But generally, the way the strategy looks is that if a market has a relatively friendly regulations in a way that our KYC system could be approved by the regulators relatively quickly, then we would just find either one of the groups that we've already been working with, because that makes the conversation a lot faster, or a different banking player there, and then we use them as kind of the first step into the market in order to grow further. So when it comes to countries outside of the North Africa plus Jordan, I think the strategy would be a lot clearer starting Q2 of 2022.
Thanks for that. So back to the investors, Steven, Scott, Adenike. Any other comments or questions?
I would just go ahead, please, Adenike.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. I guess my question will be, how much have you raised so far? Are you currently in the process of raising any funding, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so we actually, so we've raised a pre-seed round, and then that's when we first started in working on this, and we have just closed a bridge round of $450,000 from a number of institutional investors that I think some of you might know. So that we have just closed, but we're open into kind of establishing conversations for our next round. Which should be our Series A, and we believe that would take place between Q4 of this year and Q1 of next year.
Got
it. Any sense on how much you guys are looking to raise in that Series A? And I also just wanted to go back to something you mentioned before, that there's no, maybe I misunderstood this, there's no ACH or switch in Tunisia. So by proxy, banks are actually using your product to do interbank transactions. I'm just keen to understand, like, what do the economics of that look like, and can that be scaled?
Yeah, so to be clear, there is a wire transfer. So there's, switch is there in Tunisia. I mean, that's how banks kind of receive their incoming and outgoing wires. But if you're sending a wire transfer between any two institutions, then usually that takes between 24 and 48 hours for that to be reflected on your account. So what we're doing, or what we did here, is that we used the blockchain in order for all banks to come into agreement when it comes to how much each account should be given, and then at the end of the day, there is a traditional wire transfer that goes between one bank to the next, and then of course the fees would just cover the profit, but also the value date of that specific transaction. So that's kind of the accounting side of all of it. So the reason why we believe, that this, and this we've heard from multiple banks, that this kind of will just kind of help us lock the market, is the experience with traditional wire transfers or SWIFTs or ACH is extremely painful for people who need or want their money to be reflected instantly. I mean, if you send money to someone else, just to prove that you've sent the money, you actually have to kind of send the receipt, because the other person would only see it after like 48 hours at the very least. So this is what we're trying to do in Tunisia. And we think that this is scalable for all countries where the regulation would allow for this. There are some countries that have some sort of centralized system in order to make sure that interbank transfers are instant. And if that system were to exist, then the infrastructure, the payment infrastructure part wouldn't necessarily make as much sense. We'll just use what's out there and then plug it into our KYC system. If the infrastructure is lacking, then what we have is definitely scalable. As we've worked on integrations with partner banks, both using APIs, but also with some banks that haven't updated their core banking software since 2005, and thus do not have APIs, and thus we needed to actually build a full middleware to make sure that works and that it's very scalable regardless of what kind of core banking software we encounter.
We have a comment/question. Sorry about that, Scott. I didn't read this really quickly, and head over to you. From Reuven Heck again. Thanks, Reuven. My 2 cents, great opportunity, but I think it will be critical for any identity solution to be compatible with global standards, DIDs, and verifiable credentials to get positive network effects. Otherwise, you'll be replaced with global compatible solutions. What's your response to that, Nebras? And then we'll go over to Scott.
Yeah, so my response for that is that currently, when it comes to the identity space, one big factor is the regulatory environment. So even if there is some sort of global standard, when it comes to working in the banking sector or in the MFI, so in financial services in general, unless your specific central bank and your specific government says that this global standard of identification is enough to qualify for to exempt you really from further verification when it comes to AML and anti-money laundering stuff. Then what matters more is not that you're compliant with what's happening globally, but that you're compliant with what your local central bank really says. And here the regulation is relatively similar when it comes to countries. Most of the regulation just says, you need to have an interview with a client and you need to have a KYC file that has all of their identity, all of their identity there. So this is kind of what we worked on. Instead of just saying, this is going to be the next, ID for everything. We don't think that, even in the next, I don't know how many years, central banks are suddenly going to change and they're just going to embrace like any sort of international ID technology. So what we focused on is less that and more being compliant with regulation and building an infrastructure that allows us to go from one country to the next with very minimal changes in order to respond to the regulatory challenges that people are facing worldwide.
Well, thanks for that, Nebras. Over to you, Scott, for the last question comment.
Yeah, thanks again. I guess taking it back to the theme of the discussion today around blockchain and some of the various elements of that world, I was curious if you've looked into some of the underlying protocols that could be adopted into something like around global settlements. I know that a few years back, Stripe made an investment into Stellar Lumen, Stellar Development Network. Some of these guys doing more frontier market settlements across. I was just thinking in the context of building stuff that already has existed in other places in the world versus building stuff that is leveraging new technologies that could be then adopted as sort of the world may move forward. There could be some opportunity around adoption of some of these new protocols. I was just curious if you've explored some of those or find that some of those could potentially work into what you're doing, because I think you have the opportunity potentially to leapfrog a lot of the things that are sort of set in sort of their old ways in established markets like United States. I think that a lot of these innovations will actually come from frontier markets. I think it's a huge opportunity for folks around the world.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. What we're doing for instant transfers on blockchain is even though the concept is not something that we came up with, rather I think we're basically one of the first successful executions in the world of having a local settlement network that's really based on a private blockchain in a given country. And I think that is something that we're extremely proud of, regardless of the, I guess as just tech people, regardless of the investment side. When it comes to looking at what other protocols that we might use, so just kind of a general idea, what we're using is a forked version of Ripple. So that's kind of what we're doing internally. We've explored a number of other things. Stellar was one of them. We also looked at potentially using, kind of Hyperledger and whatnot. We went with Ripple because when we started building this, it was the most mature solution, and thus when tweaking it, we would have a relatively short go-to-market time. But when it comes to what we're going to do, when it comes to cross-border settlement, once we're in multiple countries, I think the moment that we're in two countries, we would have ample opportunities to explore what would be the best way to go, and maybe we would be one of the pioneers, as you said, in using one of these protocols.
Thanks for that. And we're almost out of time. Like to hear final thoughts from Steven, Scott, and Adenike. Would you invest? I think we heard from Adenike already. Steven, Scott, what are the next steps?
I have so many more questions after those last comments around Ripple and Stellar, and I want to talk much more to Nebras about that. So I will reach out separately.
Fantastic.
Scott?
Yeah, I agree. We could keep talking about this all day. So amazing job, and I think that it's a huge opportunity. And like I said there in that last comment, I think there's a real opportunity for innovation globally to come out of, it's not about sort of just dominating the Tunisian market. I think that you have the chance to prove a concept in the Tunisian market that you could then take, really globally.
Great, thank you. And the audience agrees. I think we have over 80% saying that they would put something in, and in fact, almost a quarter saying that they would put in a significant amount. So congratulations, Nebras, for a job very well done. If we want to get in touch with you, how do we get in touch with you? How do potential audience members get in touch?
I mean, LinkedIn is one way, but I'll also put my email in the chat right away. It's nebras@kaoun.com. But you can also find me as Nebras Jemel on LinkedIn, and I'd be very happy to chat with everybody.
Great. Many thanks to our co-hosts, Invest Africa and Startup List Africa, and to the investors and entrepreneurs pitching today. Make sure you follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter at Untapped Global, and you can view all past episodes and sign up for future sessions at untappedglobal.com, clicking engage. Don't forget to join us next week at this time on Clubhouse, and then on April 22nd for our next Nest pitch session, when we will re-feature alumni from the Nest, hear their progress, and help them connect with more investors. Thanks, everyone. Hear you next week, and see you next month. Thanks.
Have a good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Nairobi and Abidjan and San Juan, for joining us.